Everyone knows the story of David and Goliath. I think I heard it when I was a child. Like most people, I stopped believing that story when I grew up. In the real world, things just don't work out that way. At the beginning of the 1960s, no one believed a small family car could achieve any significant results in professional motor racing. No one but one man, my father, John Cooper.
John Cooper was known as a real racing man. His heart was really beating for racing.
He was a visionary. You know, he was pioneering thinking, he was forward, right, way down the road.
It kind of changed the circuit racing and the way of thinking completely.
John Cooper is someone who hasn't had the credit that he probably deserves in motor racing.
And John Cooper was just a charming engineer. He didn't care about social status of people so much. He was just dedicated to his job.
Cars were his life. He was an avid follower of modern cars, modern technology, and of course he always had a Mini, and he loved the Mini.
John Cooper was just what we call in English a really good bloke.
My grandfather, Charles Cooper, before the war, was a mechanic for the great land speed record holder, K. Don. My father and his school friend, Eric Brandon, decided they wanted to get into motor racing and build a car. My grandfather, Charles, wasn't too happy and said, if you're going to do this, boy, you've got to do it in your own time. And in the evenings, my father and his friend, Eric, started to mess around, and they found an old Fiat Topolino chassis, front end, and started to work on the idea of building a little Formula 3 500cc car.
And then he thought if he got another Fiat Topolino, he could saw that in half, take the front end of that one, turn the two front ends so they were back to back, and then weld them together. And that would provide his chassis with all independent suspension, front and back. He locked off the steering on the back one, or did away with it, put the motorcycle engine in the back, and drove to the back axle by a chain.
Into the last of the 15 laps, and John Cooper is in the lead. At over 90 miles an hour, he flashes past the flag to score a magnificent racing victory for Britain.
They produced this little car in their family garage business, just down here behind me in Hollyfield Road in Surbiton. And ultimately, Charles Cooper and John himself formed the Cooper Car Company to build those 500cc racing cars. Through the 1950s, Cooper began to diversify away from the early motorcycle engine cars, and in 1955 they started using the water-cooled four-cylinder Coventry Climax engine, initially in a sports car that they built, quite a clever little sports racing car.
my dad met John Cooper around about 1956-57 and started to work for him. He started to build cars, take them in the transporter and take them to the racetrack. He used a mechanic on them, he used to build them, he did everything on them, and they were two peas in a pod, those two, because they really did get on very well. They understood about racing and how to take it forward. Well, in 1957, something quite magical happened really in Monaco in the Formula One race.
There's a strong British contingent at the start of the Monaco Grand Prix.
It's the first time that a rear-engine car raced in Formula One, and my father raced it in a Cooper.
This 3-hour scramble round the houses and hairpin bends of the tiny state is one of the most exciting in the racing calendar. But the top drivers prefer it to other road races because it's better organised and safer for the public. Last lap and ahead of Tony Brooks' Ferrari was Jack Brabham. He hurled his Cooper over the line. The sporting Australian was congratulated by Princess Grace and her husband. Quite a day.
It was a time of joy, and it was the time that everybody realised that Cooper now was a real force to be reckoned with.
It became obvious that the front-engined racing car was an obsolescent dinosaur. It was a thing of the past, and that rear-engined racing cars were the way to go. And it all started, essentially, post-war, with that little Cooper.
Sound the trumpets, beat the drums, wave the flags for the fabulous twins. The nippy, zippy, raring for a trippy twins. The cars that are turning Mr. Man in the street into Mr. Man behind the wheel. The symbols of success in Britain today. Austin 7 and Morris Mini Minor.
Egypt's seizure of the Suez Canal led to worldwide crisis. First Israeli troops smashed across the Egyptian frontier to wipe out raiding bases in the Sinai
She needn't worry. There's plenty of room in the Morris Mini Minor. Just see for yourself. And so much luggage space, too. 70 miles per hour and up to 50 miles per gallon. Sit in it. Ride in it. Drive it. The Morris Mini Minor. See your dealer.
I told him, would you like to come for a ride, Nick? And he said, yes, yes. We went round the works, and I drove him at a hell of a speed. I'm sure he was terrified. Because he was so impressed by his road holding. And we stopped outside his office. He got out of the car and he said, go and make it. And I said to him, but look, I'm a designer, not a car manufacturer.
The little Mini was such a dear little thing and was greeted in this country as an extraordinary breath of fresh air. There was a new emerging market for such a car, which were a younger set of people.
they had a prototype, or very early pre-production Mini Minor, as it was known then, and my father was asked if he'd like to try it out. My father actually took the car to Italy and got all the drivers to try this car. And they all said, this is fantastic. This little car doesn't stop very well, and it's not got a lot of power, but if it could stop and it had a lot more power, this car could win races. There was a wheel at each corner. It was a very simple cross-engine design, unique and new to a small car, front-wheel drive with the gearbox underneath the engine. But the secret was the full independent suspension. And they realized then that this Mini is going to be the future. My father had a meeting with George Harriman saying that, look, we'd like you to build these cars so that we can get it homologated to go motor racing. And they said, well, what have we got to do? And he said, we've got to build 1,000 cars. And they said, well, nobody will buy 1,000 souped up cars. My father was about to leave and say, well, nobody. And George Harriman said, we're going to do it, John. He said, we'll do this and we'll produce 1,000 of these cars, and what should we call it? And my father said, why don't you call it a Cooper? George Harriman said, well, what do you want out of it? To my father said, give me £2 a car. And a contract was drawn up, and they went on and sold 150,000 of them.
Well, here I am driving a 1969 Mini Cooper S. This is actually my car. I've owned this for over 25 years, and taking it out today once again gives me a smile on my face. The thing you notice about driving a Cooper S is how direct the steering is. Everything was so accurate and positive. With a wheel at each corner, the car was renowned for its tremendous handling, and of course beat so many giants of the day. The Monte Carlo Rally, won 3 times by Paddy Hopkirk, Rauno Alton and Timo Mäkinen.
The spotlight of fame. The fame of a man like Paddy Hopkirk, who's driven a Mini faultlessly to Monte Carlo on the long, twisty, slithery hills that rally drivers meet each year.
First time I raced with a Mini Cooper, it was back in the early 60s, because it was, when did it come out? 59, I think. Yeah, as soon as it came out, well, not the Mini I didn't drive out, was when John Cooper sold the idea of putting a Formula Junior engine into the saloon. He went up to Longbridge and sold that to Aligasagonis and Sir George Harriman, and they suddenly realised that it was a pocket rocket, you know, it was a little cheap family saloon that went like hell, and it was a great car.
What's this?
The Mini Cooper S was just a little ball of fire. It was a little performance package that you could buy for relatively little money, and you could take it by the scruff of the neck and you could drive the doors off the thing. And essentially it was surprisingly difficult to have an accident with one, because even if you overdrove it and overcommitted it to a corner, by throwing the thing sideways, you could still get round the corner rather than ending up wrapped round a tree or upside down in the ditch on the exit from it. And that's what made it such a wonderful rally package.
The story is I was very lucky to be there at that time because rallying was much more an international thing. It was more like Olympics. Timing was not electronic like today's. The guy took the time you started at before you went over a call, and the guy took the time at the end, and they didn't meet until Monte Carlo, and then they all sat down with comptometers, subtracted the starting time from the finish time, so nobody knew any results. And I was lying in bed, I was sleeping. 4 days and 4 nights was hard work, really. And I was asleep, and 4 o'clock in the morning I got a call from a journalist called Bernard Caillet, who had a sneak preview at the results, and said, "You've won the rally." And I fell out of bed, so surprised.
Rally Monte Carlo 67, it was a continuation of good successes. Mini won the Monte 64, 65, 66, and we were disqualified, so we did everything to have the 67 as a revenge. I trained it for 2 weeks continuously, day and night, so I really knew it by heart. And actually in the rally itself, I put up the fastest time on that section. I was 2 minutes faster than the second car, and that's when the British press gave me the nickname the Flying Finn.
Là, c'est un grand nom du rallye Monte Carlo que nous accueillons. Rauno Aaltonen et Hans Sylvan, Maurice Mini Cooperes, le candidat et l'équipage 177 de Rauno Aaltonen, un des grands noms de l'histoire du rallye Monte Carlo.
That's one reason I'm here. I like to drive, feel the car, see the beautiful roads.
time my dad wasn't that well, and I took the car for him to have a look at, drove it around the house and said, Dad, there's the new car, the new Mini. What do you think? And he said, wow, that is good. He said, I think it might be a success. And I mean, you know, the years later, every country in the world, the name Mini Cooper is known, and he would have been so proud.
When we develop the Minis and we do something for John Cooper Works, we do special things like special tires or special chassis setups. And if we get more horsepower, we have another silencer. So the composition of all parts is something special, which has better sounds, more horsepower, better handling.
I remember when we did the exhaust on the new John Cooper Works Mini, we went through about 20, 25 prototype exhausts before we got the exact sound we were looking for.
The new John Cooper Works car was really impressive. I didn't know what to expect at first. I knew their history and that they're brilliant cars, but to drive it for the first time, put it in sport mode and drive through the mountains was spectacular. It handles so well, the engine is powerful, but also it's a day-to-day car that you can enjoy on the roads, not pushing as well as pushing, and it's a brilliant car.
My first chance to drive a Mini, I mean, it was a couple of years after I retired on WRC, and then I had a chance to drive a Mini 04 in cross-country rallies. And you know, it was really experienced team, and they've won Dakar, I think, 4 times in a row. So they had a lot of experience, and it's a strong, reliable car, so it was kind of the best team for me as well to join and learn the secrets of cross-country rallying. And at the same time, I had a chance to do one rally, normal rally, with John Cooper Works, Mini WRC as well. I was surprised when I jumped into the car that even though I had some time off from a proper rally car, but I just settled in straight away, and I did a small test, and I felt really comfortable with Mini from the beginning.
The latest John Cooper Works, it has very little overhang. It is bigger, it's larger, it's wider, it has bigger wheels, but still when you drive it you can clearly feel the genes of the original Mini. Today they call it go-kart handling.
John Cooper was one of the most popular characters in post-war British motor racing, bar none.
It is part of our history.
He was the man who actually changed the history of traditions of motorsport.